Today we have a proposed resolution in the matter of adopting a resolution against hate and election-related violence. This matter having come before the Washington County Board of Commissioners on November 1st, 2022, and it appearing to the board that, whereas Oregonians have faced tragedy on multiple fronts this year and face further challenges in the weeks to come, and whereas the COVID-19 pandemic, wildfires, and misinformation about racial justice protests have served to boost fear and anxiety, providing a fertile environment for alt-right and paramilitary organizing, and whereas these groups preach fear and division, seize on civil unrest and chaos to recruit and build power, and see Election Day as an organizing opportunity. And whereas Oregon Department of Justice, DOJ, established the Bias Response Hotline 844-924-2427, dedicated to assisting victims, witnesses, and other reporters of bias crimes and non-criminal bias incidents. And the average number of report of hate crimes in Washington County has increased since 2020, with over 122 incidents of bias and bias crimes reported so far in 2022. Whereas the Washington County Commissioners unequivocally condemn white nationalism and other movements that use bigotry to build political power, and whereas the Washington County Commissioners condemn political violence from any part of the political spectrum, and whereas paramilitary and alt-right activity is a challenge to Washington County values of inclusive democracy in Oregon, these groups use threats, intimidation, and even violence to chill democratic practice, threaten community safety, and undermine civil society. We won't be intimidated. And whereas the Washington County Commissioners believe in an Oregon that is inclusive and protects the rights of every person to live, love, work, and worship, free from fear and bigotry. We are committed to working together to protect our democracy and democratic institutions. And whereas when leaders come together as elected officials with one voice, we can shut down hate, violence, and intimidation. And whereas our community must build upon that foundation to prevent extremists from gaining a greater foothold in our community. And whereas aligning our voices can close the space with white nationalist and alt-right groups to spread fear. And whereas the Washington County Commissioners are united in these beliefs, and we will use every available power to protect our values, our democratic institutions, and our most vulnerable community members. Now, therefore, be it resolved and ordered that on this first day of November 2022, Washington County shall continue to communicate clearly that voter intimidation and political violence will not be tolerated, and follow those communications with action, and encourage community members to continue to report bias crimes using the DOJ hotline, pursue legal remedies to prevent and enforce consequences for voter intimidation and political violence, and provide clarity about consequences for voter intimidation, and commit to enforce laws in an unbiased manner. And working with elected officials and law enforcement, prioritize de-escalation and pursuing all legal options to prevent the use of firearms for intimidation purposes at or near polling places, and pursue the enforcement of any applicable anti-paramilitary laws and open lines of communication with community partners who can flag emerging situations that require intervention. and provide straightforward options for community members to report voter intimidation, and clearly set expectations for voters that they will be able to vote safely, freely, and without intimidation, harm.